Bren here. Today, I wanted to share with you the importance of learning and observing the lessons during each stage of your life. And each stage lasts about 5 to 10 years. But as we grow, each stage teaches you an extremely important ingredient to become successful and a fulfilling life. So if you are struggling in life or feel stagnant, you might be really beneficial to look back in your life and to see what's missing. And I'll give you some examples here. So when you're a little kid, right, what's important to learn is to having a curiosity. And having a curiosity is important because of the curiosity you explore. And then if you develop enough, you can delve into the passion. And then from there, you can actually develop really skills that align with your talent. But then a lot of times, like when you might remember you were asking a lot of why, right? But then maybe the adults around you kind of dismiss those curiosity as annoying or inconvenient, or they have no idea, so they just give you some BS answers that kind of frustrated you, and then you eventually kind of stopped asking too much because it's not socially beneficial. It's not really convenient for your, conducting with dealing with other people. So you kind of stopped it prematurely. And another, like when you grow older a little bit, when you're like going to the schools, and so early teens, somewhere around that age, like you start kind of learning the responsibility. Like you go to the school, you have a homework, you have some kind of structure, and then you start learning that having things done, you got the duty, and fulfilling it well, it becomes important as a member of society. But then maybe your house was very chaotic, or not a lot of discipline, so you could kind of slack off, or your teacher might unfortunately not that great, so you get frustrated and then you just gave up or whatever, and then life went by with sort of mediocre states. Nobody really forced you to fulfill your responsibility, and then you never actually develop the habit of doing so. Then the problem is, like when you become adult, that type of person tends to complain a lot, blame everything to other people, blame to the external factors. But if you do that, right, nothing's going to work out well, because nobody wants to deal with people like that. And then the result really matters, so nobody cares, especially when we're in a commercial society. If they don't want your product or services, they can just not hire you or not buy anything from you. So your life gets worse. Now, as you grow older, let's say in the teenage era, what's the important ingredient is to lesson you wanted to learn is independence. So you start becoming more differentiate yourself from parents, and then more towards the peers, then the bigger world. But at that time, like let's say if your parents are very, very like strongly like traditional, or let's say it's not really a caring, but more like a codependent, enable a lot of things. And then you haven't really developed the skin to become independent, because being an independent requires facing unknown and getting yourself into the really uncomfortable place, because you always have to, you go outside of this cage, the structure that you've been living in, right? If you miss that as you grow older, you're very fearful of unknown, and then you don't have much confidence in yourself that you can actually figure it out yourself. You'll probably not be able to decide what to do yourself. Like you can't really discern what's good or not. So you'll probably follow around gurus, or spending some money on like a scammy seminars or something, and wasting a lot of money and time. And as you grow older, like further along, Like what? Let's say when you're 20s, like mid 20s, like you start kind of learning like around that time that the focus or constrained options become very important. That's what you're going to learn. Like be more practical. That's what it is. Because when you're a kid, when you're younger, like possibility is limitless, and that gives you a sense of like powerful. But then as you grow older, you have to deal with reality in more and more seriousness, so that then you can actually build life in reality. So the constraints become important, like finding the one particular things to do, and then you just go deeper. When you're a kid or younger, you might do a lot of different things, and then it was okay, kind of shallow things, but you're exploring. But then now is the time to just kind of focus and so on, so that then you can actually develop the real skills and then competitive knowledge. If you miss that type, you might be actually doing a lot of different things, but then you're not quite able to figure out what you are. You haven't still figured out to be adult, so to speak. I'm not saying that you just do one thing, but then you got to start, go deeper and deeper. And then along the way, you can actually explore the different things. As you be more successful, you're going to have more resources to expand. That's the correct way to be practical, at the same time be more exploration like. And each stage have this type of lessons. And another thing is, I've been talking about more like a goals or a success-oriented the direction. But then let's say around the 20s, like your direction depends on your gender. Like if you're a female and if you're a male, it should differ. If not, you're gonna have a problems. Just because, like for instance, like for a male, your lesson is going to be focused on careers, focus on your purpose, and then it becomes your foundation to build families. You have a resource and so on. And then for a female, around that time, it's important to realize that the time is not infinite. If you miss those times, it's going to get harder and harder to have relationships and families, just because there are always the younger woman coming out. And biology doesn't wait. As you grow older, it's going to get harder to bear a child, and there's a lot of complications appears. It goes both ways. So for a man, if you cannot establish yourself or having some sort of resource or some kind of focus by the age of 30s, the difficulty really is after that, none of the excuse will matters for anybody, because everybody expects, like even if you become successful around 30s, everybody thinks it's obvious. That's what yours should be. And if you're not, even if you struggle, if you work hard, everybody thinks it's, yeah, so what? You're not young anymore. It's expected that you've already figured out, or you're figuring out, and then take it as a man. It's get harder if you haven't really learned the lessons, and then if you try to figure it out later on. But the good news is, it's never too late. The bad news is, like, if you try to ignore and then ride out those stages, just to say, okay, you know what, like I'm just gonna keep doing whatever you're doing for the rest of your life and then see if that works. It will not work. Just because like all these things I mentioned builds on top of each other. Unfortunately, humans has a rhythm, and then we have seasons of life. And each season, it's been programmed. You don't choose certain things in your life to become successful or do well in life. It's been given, and you have to fulfill it, take advantage of it as much as you can. You could determine that the some part of your section is not for you, and then determine that you'll disregard. It might work, but then you have to know the cost if you do that type of things. If you take the cost, then you can do whatever you want, technically, in a free society. But then I would suggest think it through. And then always just go back and see what's missing, and then just start fixing it. Let's say if you're missing the part of responsibility, like you say you're the type that you couldn't really finish what you started, or you can't keep up the job. Just determine, like, whatever the job you're gonna have, like the ethical job. Decide that you're not going to quit for 6 to a year, and then do the job excellently. Okay, no excuse. Just determine yourself. So commitment is one of the most important ingredients. And then good expectation means it's like it's going to take a while. You're not going to be able to kind of fix your like decades of habit or years of habit in a few months. You can't. You got to prove yourself that then you actually shift it. It takes about a few years at least. So have that expectation, and then it's worth to commit. It means just like, okay, when you're doing change or morph, that's all I will think about. Everything else, like hanging out with friends or, have some sort of fun. Just let it go for a while, a few years. It sounds Spartan, but then type of like ideas that you always have to kind of like escape route generally doesn't work. You have to really commit. And while you commit, the good thing is as you commit, it's not all hard because you're developing yourself stronger. So you're going to gain more resources. So it's important that you measure that with, like, let's say, tangible things like your skills, your product, or your customers, like improving, or your bank account is increasing, investment account, you can invest regularly, and so on. Some of those things getting better and better. And then realize that the life is always like 3 steps forward and the 2 steps back. So don't get discouraged just by, regular roadblock. You always have to just learn it and figure out how to move around and then go forward. But if you do that, eventually you're going to have a solid foundation for life. Even when you become 40, 50, 60, it doesn't really matter. You're going to have each stage of life give you the solid foundation. And then there is nothing you, after that, worry about. You can actually build it really strong. But then I want you to kind of look back in your life, if you're struggling and so forth, see what's missing and missing the lessons from each stage of your life. And if something missing, just focus on the one that is most lacking in your life, and then just focus on it to get that things as a habit and strategically. And if you do that, it'll take a while, but your life is going to be a lot better. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe and like and comment on the section and to help each other. And I will see you next time.